Okay, so it's time to do my audio test and get ready for the show. And before we do, I'm going to check out, make sure everything's set up and ready to go. Give Rumble time to kick in real quick.
My lighting's all over the place tonight.
Your what?
Lighting.
Oh, yeah. Actually, what?
Contrast.
There we go. Almost forgot what I used for a thumbnail on this one. I don't know why I do that. Because I have to go in on YouTube and make sure that it has the proper playlist. It sounds good on YouTube.
That's okay, I suppose.
Actually, that needs to be live streamed, not.
So just copy that.
Alright, so it sounds good on YouTube. Rumble has yet to kick in yet. It's good on Rumble. I've actually been on a winning streak on DLive. It's been working for the last three times so far.
Cool.
It sounds good on DLive too.
Just noticed that you missed Nancy earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no clue what the heck that was about. She sent me a message in her chat and on the. It sounds good on Twitch.
Saturator 155.
And it sounds good on Kick as well. So we're good to go.
Cool.
Let me go ahead and put this on my. I'll just leave it on Kick so that if anybody actually does like spam me with spam messages saying they're going to give me or help me with my viewership, I'll be able to mute them immediately.
Well, we should be able to see it on the side chat.
I barely ever keep my eyes on that. I should probably start doing that. That's a good idea. I'm gonna give a last check on the chat, see if Mr. Robot actually comes in. Yeah, Nancy sent me a message in a personal message, and then on Vixen's Vault too. So I told her I was around. So if she wants to talk to me, I'm around.
That was quite a few hours ago. You only messaged half an hour ago?
Yeah.
That was 5 hours ago. She messaged. I only just noticed it myself, so
I just now noticed it too. So here we go. Let me go ahead and get this started before anything else happens. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Roger's Real-Time Talk Show event. Today we are going to be doing the 6th episode, and this is where we go even farther. We've already discussed a lot of the older stuff that I wanted to cover with like classic liberalism. We also got into the romanticism. Yeah, romanticism. We then started talking about realist, being a realist, and what that really means, and kind of dove a little bit into the Age of Enlightenment and what that also pertains to. This takes us into another area, though, that I think is pretty interesting. What I wanted to do was continue talking a little bit about the realist nationalism, start discussing that, and then after that, I wanted to. Well, last week we debated on it I decided, what the heck, let's go ahead and do this. Let's talk about ethno-nationalism as well. Even though it's pretty controversial, I think me and you can get
Yeah,
through
I
that.
was actually a bit surprised you added that in.
Yeah, I know. I was,
I had a feeling you would, but yeah, I was just still a little bit surprised anyway.
well, I mean, it's like if you want to talk about that time period, you just have to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah, but I'm
something.
just thinking in relation to various issues of modern issues,
Right.
current issues. Yeah,
Well, not just modern issues, but like back then, man, people really don't have an understanding of what was really taking place during that time period. It's like a fog, you know what I mean? Uh,
mm,
the average person, when they think about World War One and then World War Two, they're like, it doesn't make any sense to them. You know what I mean? So, and this stuff actually has a lot to do with that. It was what was the eventual build up to World War One and World War Two.
yeah. As far as people who not really studied the subject are concerned, World War One just happened, just out of the blue.
Exactly.
Mm,
You know, and I and when you have conversations with them, they have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. You know, so whenever we were talking about that last week, I was like, I stopped for a second and I was like, you know what? Actually, we should probably do this because that was one of the real reasons why I wanted to do this in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Kind of bring some of this out and make it part of the video stream so that people have kind of an idea of what's actually taking place and what
yeah.
actually took place. Because I see that a lot of it, if you really look at it, is related to to the past. It's just you have to really look at it. So
Mm, yeah, indeed.
okay, so first I want to talk about realist nationalism. Now, before I get going, I do want to point out that realist nationalism, it can bring order and structure, but at the same time it can also feel cold, you know, technocratic and hollow, and that goes especially to those people who are wanting things that have deeper meaning, you know, and back in the day when this was going on, there was also another thing that was really kicking in, and that was ancestral pride. You know what I mean? And
Mm,
that was through the ethno nationalist movements that was taking place. So whenever you look at realist nationalists, that's what you need to understand. Like this was a cold technocratic system. You know what I mean? That
mm.
seemed hollow to these people, and without any kind of emotional meaning to it. You know what I mean? I know for sure you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
Mister.
yeah, indeed, indeed.
Now, when realism in politics is described, it's described as feeling technocratic. Okay, now that means that the approach just appears cold, methodical, and it focuses primarily on like technical management rather than any human emotions. It doesn't pertain to morality. Um, it doesn't even have any kind of visionary ideas. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Or in some cases, I'm thinking about what's happening, especially UK at the moment. There is a skewed concept of morality, let's just say.
mhm. Now, see, with technocracy, that's really where we're going with this right here. You know what I mean? Now, this is governance that's governed by experts, specialists, Then
so-called experts, not necessarily experts, but people who have been placed within that, let's say, category.
administrators too. Let's not forget
Yes.
the administrators. Now these people, what they do is their only concern is prioritizing data. They care about efficiency, um, and they want practical outcomes. They don't want ideology or populist appeal. You know what I mean? They want practical outcomes through the use of prioritizing data and efficiency, and that's all they care about. Okay.
As long as that efficiency meets their goals.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, um, with realism, they believe that realism is associated with like sober recognition of limits, and they also believe in constraints and strategic interests. Um, but that's with a kind of like calculated detachment that's supposed to prioritize what works over what feels right. You know what I mean? Rather
Mm.
than what feels right, they want something that works. You know what I mean? So it's a calculated detachment from all of that touchy feely emotional stuff. You know what I mean? Does that
Then
make sense?
I would say if the touchy-feely emotional stuff can be used as a tool within that context,
Mm-hmm.
then and they believe that is the most efficient method of getting them to their goals.
Well, when you talk about that, that's where it starts getting a little bit crazy. I mentioned it last night on Nancy's show. Okay. Um, now, what you just described there and what I was explaining, it goes into well, especially with concerns to international relations. Okay, this pertains to what I'm about to say, but that's where you start developing freaking statecraft. Okay, now with statecraft, that has a complete focus on like power, security, and national interests. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It also assumes that like states have a predictable way based on like rational self-interest and a moral considerations.
Question for you. You said national interest.
Right.
I would go further. I'm thinking of so-called states such as the European Union, um, within the jurisdictional boundary rather than not necessarily in a national boundary.
Well, now today it would definitely expand. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And like when we start getting up to the EU and everything, I'm pretty sure that it's going to open up more. You know what I mean? But like
mm,
back during this time period, that's what they were aiming more for is like the national interests, and it focused on power, security, and national interest, and that was all it was, and that had to do with statecraft. You know what I mean?
Even at that time, I'm thinking things like the Hungarian, Austrian
Mm-hmm. And that,
alliance,
yep.
or even going back further, the sort of Napoleon concept.
And see, before we did this, I was thinking about this too. Okay, now having the ideas and the thoughts and everything is one thing, but like when you start coining things, you know what I'm saying, where it's
Mm. Oh yeah.
recognized, you know what I mean. That's where the difference is because like like whenever people talk about like national pride and everything. I'm sure that before all this started, there were a lot of people in these countries who had pride for their country and their
Yeah.
ancestral beginnings and all that stuff, but it wasn't coined yet. You know what I mean? There
Mm.
wasn't there wasn't an actual movement with it named. You know what I mean? And like at this point, that's where I think, because I thought about that before we got on here, and I was like, hold on, now this would be the time period where all of this was actually becoming coined as something, and it was actually being put into action. You know what I
I
mean?
mean, between Napoleonic Wars and well, let's say between the 18th to the 20th century, we are seeing states as we know them now being formed.
Mm-hmm. Well, like, I'm thinking you're probably wanting to say the Revolutionary War to the Napoleonic Wars and into now.
I was thinking even earlier. I was thinking even you could even call the union between, even though that's earlier, but the union between England, Wales, and Scotland, and North or Ireland at the time, Northern Ireland now.
Well,
Uh,
I'm not wanting to mention my weird channels, but I did an article too on the Order of the Golden Fleece. You know what I mean? So if you really want to go back and really look at it, you can really tie the Order of the Golden Fleece into this too.
when did modern Greece, Greece as we know it now, be? When was that formed?
Oh my goodness, dude!
I was just thinking that must, yeah,
You're talking about Athens and all of that, and
yeah. Greece as in the jurisdiction.
the actual
No,
state.
yeah.
Yeah. Now,
1830.
1830.
Yeah, Greek War of Independence from the Ottoman Empire happened between 1821 and 1829. The Greeks celebrate their Independence Day on March 25th.
Mm-hmm.
So 1830, yeah.
Now, just so we bring this up about statecraft, so I want to make this important because, or I want to finish this off saying this because it's very important. Leaving it undone is not really a good idea. Now, I was talking about statecraft and how it relates to rational self, or uh, how it often assumes it believes in national interest and security and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But I also wanted to point out that it behaves in predictable ways, it assumes that each state behaves in predictable ways, okay? Um, Based on like rational self interest. Uh, Now, they don't agree with moral considerations, even though they understand that it might be personally important. They don't like they don't believe that personal importance significantly influences large scale political behaviors. You know what I'm saying? Um, and that's the one thing that they have
Can
caused.
say modern day democracy by voting once every, what, 4 or 5 years.
Well, democracy was cool back whenever they were building constitutional governments and everything, but this is where things start taking a turn. You know what I mean? This statecraft, first of all, is not good. Technoc technoc Technocracy isn't good either. I mean, it might sound good, but it really isn't. It doesn't really have anything to do with the individual. It has to do
Hmm.
with the state and the state alone. Whenever we talk about bureaucracy and stuff like that, this is what we're talking about. You know what I mean? It's a statecraft bureaucracy, basically that pertains to predictable outcomes. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
And they use self interest, rational self interest and stuff like that. Uh, but they don't even care about like moral considerations. And this this is very interesting when you look at it, because with this perspective, it can lead to like policies that are effective in like maintaining stability or avoiding unnecessary risk, but it can also appear indifferent to like people who are suffering, or injustice, or even like aspirations. You know what I mean? Like if you want to aspire a community, it doesn't really help out when your government is ran by a bureaucracy of statecraft. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So it becomes a matter of uh, of feeling cold and methodical. You know what I mean? Calculated with no. Go ahead.
I read, and this is just a theory, this is just a hypothetical. I bet a benevolent state craft as government.
I don't think that exists.
yeah. Like I said, it's a hypothetical.
Mm-hmm. Now, with statecraft, it becomes a matter of balancing costs and benefits, and also they take risk and reward into consideration. Um, and that's without openly acknowledging like the emotional or symbolic needs of the people. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, it emphasizes its emphasis is on procedural competence and strategic calculations, and that's what makes realism feel technocratic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it all goes back to the fact that it feels like technocratic because decisions are justified by expertise, precedent, or necessity rather than,
Trust the experts, yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? The experts have said it is fact.
Mm.
It's kind of like all the stuff that you hear whenever we're on Nancy's show, and Nancy starts getting all into politics and talking crazy and stuff.
It just reminds me of the what was it, Klaus Schwab's mentioned in a Davos meeting a couple of years ago, in the concept of removing democracy and having, I don't know, machine, an artificial intelligence of sorts, controlling the world, everything.
Yep. and
Mm.
and and now you are getting the idea of what's being said here, because you mentioned Klaus, and after we get through uh, ethno ethno nationalism, I want to go over some of the modern individuals in today's world who would fit into this realist category. You know what I mean? Who would be considered realist, and
Yeah.
maybe get into it. I might actually even just talk all highfalutin, and say how great they are and everything, just to kind of piss people off. You know what I mean?
I think for the purpose of structure, we should talk about ethno nationalism first.
That's
Yeah.
what I agree. Yes, I debated on that too. I was like, we should talk about ethno nationalism. You are absolutely right, because like we start talking about all of these modern individuals in today's world, and it's gonna take us for,
Oh, tangent, yeah.
yeah. So now, like I said, realism does it feels technocratic because of decisions that are justified by like the experts, what sets precedent, and necessity. Um, Now, they don't believe in popular sentiment or moral clarity. You know what I mean? Now, a good example of that is a realist foreign policy might support maintaining ties with and I'm just going to say it like this, a morally questionable regime. Okay.
Okay.
And the only reason why they do it is because it ensures energy stability or regional balance. Okay. Now
Hmm.
the argument would be that upsetting that balance, even for a noble cause, might bring more harm than good. You know what I mean? And that's the way they think. Now, in doing so, um, the policy might even serve national interests, but uh, it may also appear cynical or heartless to those who value principles or pragmatism. You know what I mean?
Thinking of certain situations, I suppose there's a perspective then.
Well, I mean, you get what I'm saying there, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like now,
I'm thinking of a certain thing that's happening at the moment,
you,
which again we won't mention.
well, you can mention it, just don't get all rowdy and outrageous. Don't be.
Well, I'm thinking the Palestinian Israel
Mm,
issue, which is an issue that is complicated on both sides.
I mean, if you want to discuss it, it's cool to discuss it as long as we don't have Mr. Robot here. I think that's the only reason why he said he wanted to come in because he knew what we were about to get into. So he wanted.
But no, I think it'd be more sensible for us just to stick to principles at the moment.
Mhm. Now that that is something that uh, is what I think is a real big issue when it comes to situations like that. Because what it is we have governments who are placing the national interest above what people value, what their values are, their principles. You know what I mean? Um,
Let's call it in this respect. Let's call it territorial principles.
it's really principles over pragmatism. Is
Yeah, 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 yeah. But when it comes to the Israel Palestine, then it's I didn't want. I want to stay away from calling it national issues because yeah, that raises a whole load of that raises a can of worms in itself.
mm-hmm.
Mm.
Now, technocratic realists, uh, they also might like resist sweeping reforms or revolutionary movements. It's not because they're ideologically opposed to things like change, but it's because they calculate that they calculate sudden disruptions. You know what I mean? And they think that like sudden disruptions will lead to like unintended consequences. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and arguably, as we've seen in Iran at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
mm. Even though the creation of modern Iran in '79 was due to a revolution anyway.
I think this takes on more of a conservative um, a conservative realist kind of approach because it when we talk about this kind of stuff, it's more of a cautious approach. You know what I mean? Uh, and it and the reason why they do that is because they want to emphasize like continuity. You know what I mean? And gradual adjustments. Yeah.
In certain circumstances, and I'm thinking again, modern day Iran, is it a cautious, or is it they would just want to keep the situation as is?
That kind of gets into something that's probably going to be a little nerve wracking for you when I mention this, but monarchism too. Like I actually looked at Iran's government and the way that they do their dealings there, and I noticed that there's a lot of resemblance between the way they do their form of government to the way it's done in England, you know,
It's
because
based
the
yeah, I actually had a conversation with somebody not that long ago about this. Both, in principle, both are based on theologic concepts.
well, it goes even deeper than that. Like I just found out recently that it was the Crown who appointed the prime minister.
Yeah,
Okay, that's the same concept as what's his name, the leader of Iran. They do the same thing. As a matter of fact, they appoint their entire cabinet basically that's supposed to represent like their version of the Senate. You
but
know,
in Britain, every single citizen over the age of at the moment 18 has the ability to vote, and
now
their vote counts.
is that for both?
Very.
Is that for both the lower um, chamber and the upper chamber?
The House of Lords, no,
Okay.
but in theory, this is an interesting one because the House of Commons, the Parliament, actually decides on legislation. The House of Lords is there to oversee the House of Commons, and in theory, they should all be experts within their selected fields.
You know what that sounds
And
like?
then the final sort of rubber stamping, as it is really these days, comes down to the monarch.
Hmm. Now,
In theory, the monarch could deny legislation, but I don't think that's how has happened, or that I don't think that has happened in my lifetime.
they even in all the sources I went to, they even said the same thing. Like it's never happened since Parliament's been or gained power, I should say.
Mm.
But now, when you're talking about that stuff, now making decisions is one thing, but who votes people into the House of Commons? Is it
We the people.
okay?
Oh,
Now,
actually, we the people vote for ministers to stand for our constituencies.
okay,
Unlike America, we don't vote for um, prime ministers or presidents. We vote for parties when it comes to general elections. There is it's a interesting distinction where I always feel that Americans make a much more sort of cult of personalities out of the voting, whereas we, technically speaking, only vote for parties.
you're technocrats.
Yeah,
So
and because as we saw with what was it 2 years ago, we had what four prime ministers in a year, and
mhm,
we we only voted for the first, or we only voted for the first party.
right.
Um, the prime minister is just a much more of an administration role. If that makes sense.
See, the thing of it is like in a technocratic government. Okay, it often favors like central planning. You have long-term analysis, institutional maintenance over public persuasion or grassroots mobilization, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So basically, what you're talking about right there is a technocratic uh, voting system where it's set.
Yeah, but parties don't, as you know, in the US, parties don't look beyond 5 years these days. When it comes to, well, with maybe the exception of a few areas, um, but generally speaking, parties don't live beyond 5 years.
Now, for me though, like in democratic societies, when it comes to this kind of setup, I think that it can make realism, or technocratic governments like that appear aloof. You know what I mean, or out of touch with like popular emotions. Uh, now,
I'm not sure.
especially when it's grounded in just practical logic. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure because again, once every 4 or 5 years, people have got the ability to vote for a party. And granted, if you've got a very limited selection of parties, as has been historically 2, 3 parties in the UK, that causes an issue because there isn't, especially in recent years, there isn't that much of a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Either you vote for blue or you vote for red, or maybe if you naive enough, vote for yellow.
All these
Uh,
all these colors.
yeah, but same as Democrats and Republicans in US. But with what we've seen recently, we are seeing new parties being created,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the last year or two, couple of years in fact.
Now, just so we can break this down, because I mean this is important, like the contrast with romantic and idealist approaches. Okay, right here in this conversation, this is where it becomes stark. It really is. So romanticism values passion. Okay, they value symbolic meaning, and then they also value moral righteousness. Okay, it's supposed to speak to the soul. It stirs loyalty and it fuels dreams and justice and basically just transformation. You know what I mean? Um, Now, a lot of romanticists tend to see the world in terms of potential rather than constraint. All right. So then you have that with real romanticism. Okay. Then you have the realists. Uh, by contrast, they're more interested in uh, what can be preserved or managed. Okay. They don't ask what is ideal, but what is possible, basically. You know what I mean? They have a pragmatic mindset, and they apply it to like systemically uh, rooted kind of governance. You know what I mean? And that goes back to what I was talking about statecraft. You know, they 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 use pragmatism and they apply it to statecraft. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
It,
okay. Yeah, okay. What you mean? Yeah.
so it kind of resembles the mindset of like an engineer who's solving a problem, or a physician treating a symptom. You know what I mean? The main goal is to function and survive, and that doesn't include poetry or grandeur or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very utilitarian
Right.
concept.
Exactly. So, I mean, for me, especially with you personally, I think that you're kind of like gripped in between the struggle of two ideologies, and you really, you know what I'm saying? Because like I can see that you have that romanticism in you, but at the same time, you've got that realist kind of attitude too. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that it's not just you; it's a lot of other people in England who are going through that same kind of situation. You know what I mean?
Britain, yeah. Yeah.
And that's one reason why I think it's important to go through this stuff, is because there's a lot of things that are going on today. If you just take a look, at the history of things and how things have played out, you'll see that things have a tendency of repeating itself. You know what I mean?
Was the old saying, those who don't learn from history
Are
tend to
cursed,
repeat. Yeah.
are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
Now, the technocratic realist is someone who believes in political and social decisions, um, or that they're someone who believes in political and social decisions. Um, they believe that they should be guided by expert knowledge, technical data, and rational planning. Now, even though they believe in that, they claim that they also understand that power, human flaws, and real world limitations are what shape outcomes. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Now, historical figures like I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to think.
Now he embodies this blend perfectly. He transformed a small struggling colony into like a global financial powerhouse. And he did that by relying on strict policy, technical expertise, and a clear-eyed view of human nature. Basically, you know, he wasn't idealistic. He just believed in discipline, uh, meritocracy, and smart governance. And he didn't have any illusions. You know what I'm saying? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, another one that I want to bring out when it comes to realists is, and everybody hates her. It's Angela Merkel. Merkel. Okay. Now she is 100% a technocratic realist.
Mm.
Okay. Um, now she. A lot of people don't know this, but she was a trained scientist. Do you know that?
Yeah, yeah, I'm aware of that, but she was also shaped by, she lived on the west side of Berlin, so she was, yeah, that sort of communist mindset from an early age.
Well, realist in communism slash socialism is it's like a hand, you know, glove fitting in
Mm.
your hand. You know what I mean? They kind of went together. Um, but she was also a pragmatist. That's what a lot of people don't understand. It was all about being a pragmatist. Um, Now all she cared about was data, and she was very cautious.
Sorry, I said West Germany was communist, didn't I?
Yeah,
I meant East. Yeah, I meant East.
you're right. It was
So, yeah,
East.
yeah, yeah.
You're right, because East and West. See
Mm.
how things change in your head. I mean, it was like me and you were both alive when the wall fell. You know what I mean?
Indeed, indeed. Yeah. We remember the nuclear scares of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now her. Now the thing I did want to say about Merker is she 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 was very cautious. You know what I mean? Like if you really pay attention to what she did, she was actually really good at navigating through a lot of the messes that were going on in European politics. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the weird part is that she had control. You know what I mean? She was the one in control, but you never heard her really say much publicly. She was real quiet.
I can remember a few speeches. I can't pinpoint them, but I remember a few speeches she made.
You can't pinpoint them though. See, that's why.
No, I would have to do a bit of research and remind myself.
Exactly. It was insignificant. You know what I mean? It was nothing
Well,
that
it was insignificant for me being a Brit.
I'm
Well,
sure. I'm sure. I can't
sort
remember.
of insignificant, I say.
I can't remember any of her speeches. Like it was insignificant to me too. You know what I mean? I
But
wonder.
yeah, but you are even further away. You're a US citizen. Um, you weren't affected by things like the Schengen Agreement, and
She was squeaky clean, like Mr. Clean was. You know what I mean? The big old bald headed guy on the commercials. You know what I mean? She was like Mr. Clean. She's just squeaky, all quiet and shifty and stuff. So
mm,
now after her, another guy I want to mention, and this guy nobody likes, I don't think, and that's Henry Kissinger. Okay, now he basically is a classic realist. If anybody freaking is can be determined as a realist, he would be the person that you would consider as a realist. You know what I mean?
I was just thinking on in current politics, Macron.
Macron.
Oh,
So what do you consider him as being a realist for?
for very similar sort of reasons as um, the German, um,
Markle.
yeah, um, he's known for making sort of, well, with the odd exceptions, he is known for speaking on the world stage.
Mhm. Now, when it comes to Kissinger, though, you know the reason why I said that, even though he's really a controversial person, um, with Kissinger, he was driven by like strategy, power dynamics, and the belief that like nations operate in their own self-interest, not based on morality. You know what I mean? He believed that. He believed that no matter how much people in government talks about morality, that wasn't really their true motives. You know what I mean? It was always based on their own self interest. You know.
Whereas, I don't know, when it comes to people like Macron and Merkel, you could say the same thing, but within the confines of the European Union. Um, you could argue that Merkel had a lot of protectionism as when it came to Germany.
Well, see, the thing that about Kissinger that kind of bounces off of that is that like his foreign policy was always cold and calculated. You know what I mean? Now he designed it to like maintain balance rather than like win people's applauses. You know what I mean? He didn't care about freaking handshakes and claps. You know what I mean? It was cold and it was calculated. He didn't care about how many lives were lost or anything of that nature because that was just emotions. All he cared about was freaking if it worked and if it didn't work. You know what I mean? It's very cold and calculated.
Again, the handshake concept only if it served these purposes in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Self
Yeah,
interest.
yeah.
Always self interest. Now, I know, I know when I tried to hold off on all the people who in today's world were about were is people that you would consider as being realists, but I couldn't hold off any longer, so I figured I would just start it. But the one that really sticks out in today's world that I believe would be a really perfect example of as a realist would be someone like Elon Musk. Even though he's unconventional, he does fit the mold in his own way. You know what I mean?
I can sort of see it.
Because like he pushes the engineering. You know what I mean? He pushes for engineering basically. He's into driven solutions like to global challenges. He's really big into things like energy and transportation.
Yeah, but when it comes to these companies, he hasn't been overly successful when it comes to logistics.
Well, he still tries to tackle them, though. You know what I mean? He thinks of them as like challenges, and like he's
Hmm.
obsessed with it. You know what I mean? He's also navigating through political structures like what we've been talking about here. Um, he wields a lot of influence. You know,
Well, arguably, a lot of his previous income as coal, even current income, comes from the U.S. taxpayer.
well,
Has come from the U.S. taxpayer.
well, look at like Doge. You know what I mean? Even with Doge, like
I
even
mean, I'm thinking even before that, I didn't. It's the Starlink and the Tesla projects were in part funded by state subsidies, U.S. Federal subsidies.
well, even there. I mean, it's like all of these people that I mentioned. Okay, they they share like a blend of like technical thinking um, and like realist grounded actions. Like they don't just dream, they maneuver. You know what I mean? That makes sense.
Yes and no. I say no because again I bring go back to the logistics then. Maybe outside of the US, how popular is our Starlink and Tesla products?
Mhm. Now, the essence of like the technocratic realist is basically like high intellect. It's also sharp strategies.
Mm.
It's also like a refusal to pretend the world is anything but what it really is. You know what I'm saying? Things of that nature. And I think that's what these people really do. They don't really like have that romanticism within them where they have this desire to return the world back to the golden age that it came from. You know what I mean?
I
It's
don't
very
know. I'm thinking, would you call it romanticism or would you call it idealism? Um,
ideal.
Musk Musk being a romantic, an
Yeah,
idealism, an idealist.
maybe an idealist. And see, that's what I was talking about. It's a technocratic idealist.
I mean, also, was it Mr. Robert earlier gave us that article on Zuckerberg's so-called super intelligence or yeah. Then, would you call Zuckerberg an idealist?
Who?
Uh,
Zuckerberg?
yeah.
Well, Zuckerberg, yeah, and the thing of it is you got to understand. I don't find the term idealist as a positive term, to be honest. Like,
Mm.
it's just like a romanticist. Like, at first, I thought that was a pretty cool concept until I actually read and researched it and seen what happened because of romanticism. You know what I mean?
I think I coined this called. Oh, I think I coined this idea several years ago. But one person's utopia is another person's dystopia. Yeah. One person's idealism is another person's version of hell.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me go back over this when it comes to statecraft, though. Like, statecraft refers to the art of governing a state or nation, especially in terms of strategic planning, diplomacy, and political leadership. Now, it encompasses all the skills and methods used by political leaders to manage internal affairs, conduct foreign policy, protect national interests, and maintain power and order. Now, while politics can be messy and reactive, statecraft is the deliberate, calculated, and often long-term strategy behind how a country is run and how it interacts with the world. So that's basically how I want to close that up, because I'm cool like that. You know what I mean? I like to have cool endings to a topic, because now what I want to do is, I know that you are tired, okay, but we do.
I'm still okay for
we do have we do have to get coffee and use the bathroom. So I'm gonna mute out, and I'm gonna come back real quick. But I want to start off with ethno-nationalism, okay? And this is where things start getting interesting, because we've been talking about the technocracy and we've been talking about the realists, but this is where things get down and dirty. You know what I mean? This
quite literally.
This is where Robot should be grateful he's not here, because his head would be on a chopping block right now.
Or Madame La Guillotine, yeah.
Yes. Exactly. You're just grinning from cheek to cheek.
So that's why as you sort of alluded to yourself, it's an amusing thought when you consider the robot stance.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go ahead and I'll put on a cool song for, I believe I still have a background song on here. I took a lot, background music. I'll put this on, and then I will go do a quick cigarette smoke, drink some coffee, or to get some coffee, and then come back here after I take a bath, or not a bath.
Have a three-course meal at the same time. Yeah.
Exactly. After I have a cigarette and get my coffee and use the bathroom. That's what I was getting ready to say. I'll be back. But, all right, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Awakening from an epic dream, awakening from the long dark night. Awakening from history, awakening from duality. The liberation of the human soul to consciousness of the one and all. The activation of the sacred plan, the birthing of a new man, a new man. When the light within is revealed, all the pain and suffering shall be healed, and the truth of love is our destiny, living on the earth in peace and harmony. perceptions, awakening to the joy of life. Awakening to a new dimension, awakening to a paradise. The illusion of separation disappearing to unity. Into the source of a high vibration, into the wonder of the mystery. A mystery. When the light within is revealed, all the pain and suffering shall be healed, and the truth of love is our destiny, living on the earth in peace and harmony. Theophilus Thistler, the thistle sifter, is sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles. Thrust 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Theophilus Thistler, the thistle sifter, is sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles. Thrust 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. 3,000 thistles. Mr. Robot rolled around a rolled round, and if Mr. Robot rolled around a rolled round, where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Mr. Robot rolled round. Mr. Robot rolled round. And if Mr. Robot rolled a rolled round, and if Mr. Robot rolled around a rolled round, where is the round roll? Mr. Robot rolled round. Here is an exercise demonstrating the union of in at the end of words. Dividing and gliding and sliding and falling and brawling and sprawling and driving and driving and striving. Dividing and gliding and sliding and falling and brawling and sprawling and driving and driving and driving. Theophilus Thistler, the thistle sifter, is sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles. Plus 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Plus 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Plus 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Theophilus Thistler, the thistle sifter, is sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles. Plus 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. 3,000 thistles. Mr. Robot rolled around a rolled round, and if Mr.
Once the gods carved earth like a cosmic chessboard, Poseidon claimed Atlantis, his star-born accord. 10 twin suns, throne of tridents waves at his command. Empire stretched from Baobic stones to Mayan sand. Monoliths stacked like Legos blocks no crane could lift. Sonic levitation, gods don't need pulleys or grit. Athena taught Athens, Hephaestus forged veins of gold, but Atlantis spires pierced heaven, stories untold. Ages of virtue, divine blood pure in the veins. No egregious geodesic temples where starlight reigns, but mortality crept in, diluted the grace. Gold turned to rust, hubris eclipsed the god fast.
Of Atlantis, drowned in the deep. Poseidon's lost kingdom, where titans still sleep. From Giza to Tiwanaku, the codes ancient law, as above, so below. Cosmic empire of laws and princes of plasma, their thrones now debris. Echoes of Atlantis, where gods walked the sea.
Zeus watched the fall, saw vice crack the divine. Pyramids hummed warnings, but they ignored the signs. Sky split with fury, tsunami swallowed their pride. Atlantis sang screaming, but blueprints survived. Baalbek's foundation, stones that defy modern math. 1,000-ton puzzle, gravity's aftermath. Scholars still baffled how they align the stars. They rode cosmic currents, breaching space-time's bars. Now divers chase shadows where crystal cities gleamed. AI scans the ocean, but truth's a half-dream. Freemasons whisper maps in their lodges of lore. Plato's Critias, a metaphor or a war.
Echoes of Atlantis, drowned in the deep. Poseidon's lost kingdom, where titans still sleep. From Giza to Tiwanaku, the codes ancient law, as above, so below. Cosmic empire of law, 10 princes of plasma, their thrones now debris. Echoes of Atlantis, where gods walk the sea.
They say Poseidon's seed still flows in our veins. In every megalith, every grid that restrains. The Dogon chart Sirius, Templars guard the flame. But Atlantis tech, it's encoded in our DNA's frame. Zeus's verdict was fire, a flood in ice. Yet the Sphinx still stares, whispering sacrifice. Mortal minds crave power, but miss the design. True kings rule through resonance, not bloodline. Now decode the ruins, their psalms etched in stone. A star-born king's empire, now dust and bone. The hall of records buried neath Giza's cold gaze holds anti-gravity schematics from pre-flood days. Crystal engines hummed, organ fueled their might, till pride turned their frequencies dissonant blight. The Anunnaki fled, Mars colonies crumbled. Leviathan's bones in the Mariana rumbled. But Poseidon's ghost rides the Bermuda's mist. Evolve past the greed or drown in the abyss. Tsunamis taller than gods crack continents like eggs. Jungles of Egypt drowned, turned to sand in Poseidon's regret. Mammals shrunk to lapdogs, skies choked by volcanic breath. Waves circled the globe thrice, 3 funerals for death. Up Nephistim, rode the arc of frequencies, not wood. Up tetrahedron ziggurat where anti-grav pulses stood. While Atlantis sank, he spliced DNA and quantum seeds, stashed them in Göbekley's veins and Indus Valley reeds. Volcanic winter's curse, Zeus hit the reset, scorched the grids, erased the moon-ringed internet. Noah's not a shepherd, he's a star-born archivist, cracking hermetic scrolls in caves where mushrooms twist. The survivors crawled from mud with amnesiac eyes, built new gods from scrap metal and fallen skies. Now desert bones whisper where cedars once soared. Man's just a ghost in Atlantis' holographic horde. Blood wasn't water, it was math. A codex purge, Enoch's nightmares digitized in the cosmic surge. As above, so below, the blueprint stays true. Rise from the ashes or drown in what's new. The flood wasn't water, it was math. A codex purge, Enoch's nightmares digitized in the cosmic surge. As above, so below, the blueprint stays true. Rise from the ashes or drown in what's you. Echoes of Atlantis drowned in the deep, the deep. Poseidon's lost kingdom, where titans still sleep. From Giza to Tiwanaku, their codes etched in awe. As above, so below, cosmic empire of law. 10 princes of plasma, their thrones now debris. Echoes of Atlantis, where gods walk the sea. So when you see Stonehenge, Angkor Wat spire, know Atlantis in 20 years, a block every 2 minutes. Hieroglyphs scream their pride, but not a how and what's written. Modern science scratches heads, these structures can't be mimicked. Copper tools, now scholars tripping, logic thinly stretched and twisted. Ran an obelisk, 1,000 tons dragged across the sand. Today's cranes can't lift a fifth, what force moved them by hand? Call the ancients primitive, yo, that's pure delusion. Physicists today need miracles to crack their fusion. The high priest of Kemet mapped the stars with precision, while modern minds stay chained to 3D prison. Land of the lost, esoteric Egypt, hidden with an allegorical crypt. Written in the language of symbolism, advanced knowledge cloaked in simple living. Secrets that rewrite history's episode. As above, so below, the hermetic code. Key of life unlocks the heavenly abode. Conscious matrix, how came a pyramid ode? The Sphinx wears water scars, a flood from ancient skies. Explosives crack the pyramids, no tombs, just hollow lies. Money stolen? Nah, that's ego talk, a weak hypothesis. Truths buried in the stars, encrypted in the myths. Sacred geometry, pagan songs, the roots of Christendom. Pythagoras knelt at their feet, Jesus learned the kingdom. Temples mirror Orion, Aztecs trace the same glow. Megalithic GPS, what's buried below. They split the lotus stem, hid wisdom at the core. Solomon's temple, just a copy of what came before. Land of the lost, esoteric Egypt, hidden wisdom, allegorical crypts. Written in the language of symbolism, advanced knowledge cloaked in simple living. Secrets that rewrite history's episode. As above, so below, the hermetic code. Key of life unlocks the heavenly abode. Conscious matrix, alchemy pyramid ode. Iron to gold, alchemy's flame, they mastered the unseen. Telekinetic levitation, Mars dust in their genes. Critics laugh, aliens but the proof's in the plasma. Why is the Dogon tribe no serious? Was a binary drama. Myths of metaphors, the truth's too bright to hold. Scattered in ruins worldwide, a map etched in gold. They call themselves Negeru, gods with cosmic ships. Gifted fire, math and law, then dip beyond the eclipse. Now academia's gatekeepers mock what they can't measure. The scales of Ma'at weigh soul, not tech or treasure. The Zet Tepe dawned when gods walked as king. Left blueprints in Gobekli Tepe and the Nazca line. The emerald tablets truth burns through the scholar's denial. We're echoes of starlight reclaiming our trial.
When you stare at the sky, feel the ache in your chest. That's ancestral memory. We're all cosmic guests. The pyramids home a hymn, rising cold but divine. As above, so below, till the world's realigned.
Land of the lost, esoteric Egypt, the truth's a spiral eternity script. In the language of symbolism, we're gods we've been missing.
Okay, we are back. If you guys enjoyed that, that was brought to you by Mr. Robot, aka Illuminati, on Rumble. You can check him out at his channel called Hacker Radio. If you guys enjoyed the music, stop by, tell him you liked it, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. As you can tell.
Sorry, I'm not sure, but there might have been a problem with the last track.
Oh, really?
It seemed like it looped for the first, well, as far as I can say, I haven't reviewed the extra stream, but it looped for the first couple seconds and twice, and then just cut out.
That's probably from Rumble. I've been having issues with Rumble's been doing some weird stuff to me here lately, so that could be an issue there.
Would have to review the actual recording.
Well, the good thing is whenever I make the edited version of this, I cut out the music and stuff like that, so that it's not going to be in the edited version. Which, well, actually, I might actually have it in the edited version now, because I've been think it was this one or where it was Rogers live with Roger Hansen. Yeah, I think that's
This
the one.
happened once, at least once before, maybe.
Yeah. So with that being said, let's get on to the more important stuff rather than Mr. Robot's music, because we're getting ready to get into the bread and butter of history, what took place between the late 1800s all the way up until the end of World War II, and even beyond.
Hmm.
This really ties into a lot of the issues that we have had in the past. Now, um, I forgot the name of, or no, actually, I've got it. I keep forgetting I have the talking points, but this has to do with a combination of ethno-nationalism and revanchism, I guess would be the way of saying it, that we discussed in the last episode. You remember that, don't you?
Yeah.
Now, revanchism is something that really stood out to me. Um, First of all, people need to understand that with this term revanchism, which I haven't ever used until just recently, but with that kind of thinking, it often like distorts the past, and why it does that, it does it to create like a simplified version of what's right and wrong. You know what I mean? And that usually it pertains to one's own group, and they always make them out to be victims, and other people are always to the blame. To blame, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Now, this is a black-white view of the world, okay, and a lot of times it can fuel extremism. It also undermines democracy, basically. And it's been known to destabilize a lot of regions. So I wanted to bring that back up before we get into ethno-nationalism. I wanted to just do what I just did, but before we started getting into that. Now, that region, the Franco-Germanic Wars, what we were discussing, wasn't it, when we were having that conversation?
Yeah.
And as a result of that war, France had lost territory to Germany, and that caused what I just discussed. Is called revanchism, which created a lot of tensions between France and Germany, and this was just before World War One, and that built up, and it fueled what would eventually become World War One, basically. But there was other aspects that were involved in it, and that's where we get into ethno-nationalism, and this is the part that me and Mr. Edworthy both were kind of doubtful on getting into, weren't we, Mark?
Yeah.
Because it's very, very controversial. And I'm kind of glad Mr. Robot didn't come in, because he would start talking a bunch of crazy stuff. I have this sneaky suspicion he would, you know what I mean? But with that, you want to talk about ethno-nationalism?
You continue and I'll interject when.
Okay. So basically, ethno-nationalism is the belief that a nation should be defined by a shared ethnic identity, meaning a common ancestry, language, culture, and sometimes even religions. It's the idea that a particular ethnic group should form its own nation state or have dominant control over one, because that group shares like a unique deep-rooted bond that outsiders don't share. That's the first part of it. But two, ethno-nationalists, like national identity, it isn't just about shared laws or geography. It's about blood and heritage. You would find that in the Volk Society in Germany, where they believed in blood and soil. And they preached it way before World War II. You know what I mean? Everybody believes that the Volk Society started in World War II, but it actually started way before that. And I believe they even still have the Volk Society today in some countries. You know, it's still practiced even today. From the last time I've seen it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of what's happening in South Africa at this present moment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That was one thing that really stuck out to me when it came to a lot of this.
Possibly what caused serious issues in Zimbabwe.
Yeah. Well, I connect the things that happen in South Africa as well as what has been going on with Israel and the Palestinians as well, because it all rotates around this ethno nationalism. You know.
Israel Palestine is a bit more complicated because of the sort of Hamas sort of well, not just Hamas, but the theologic point on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, any way you look at it, it still comes back to ethno-nationalists. You know what I mean? An ethno-nationalist and their national identity isn't just about shared laws or geography. You know what I mean? It's about blood and heritage. It's a divine belief.
Actually, rather than looking at it from a German point of view, Franco's Italy. Oh, sorry, Mussolini's Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Much more appropriate. Yeah.
Now, ethno-nationalism is the belief that like the nation should be defined primarily by a shared ethnic identity, like ancestry, language, culture, and often a religion. Now, you'll find that this is a conflict that happened between the realists and these ethno-nationalists. Now, ethno-nationalists is basically what Romanticism evolved into as time went on. It was this is an example of Romanticism going way over the top. You know what I mean? Crossing that line, and there was a conflict between realists and these ethno-nationalists, where the realists would go out and they would insult these people's beliefs because they believed that they were superstitions. They believed that they were folklore, make believe, all that stuff. So they would openly attack their heritage, their ancestry, their lore that gave them their national pride and stuff of that nature. Now, you had that going on with the realists that were doing that. But at the same time, you had the ethno-nationalists who were telling people that if they didn't speak the same language, they needed to leave, get the hell out, speak our language or go home, kind of stuff. And that's where that terminology came from. Like, we hear it in the United States all the time, and nobody even thinks about it. But
the US is a more interesting sort of concept because the reality, the US was created by migrants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, the language thing was what it was. It's like I grew up mostly in Florida, in Georgia, and then Arizona. Okay, and like I'm fully aware of speak our language or go home. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people would say that when it came to Hispanics.
So I saw a amusing post not that long ago about Americans, US citizens, telling British to speak American.
I wouldn't want that to even
Yeah.
happen. Like, can you imagine if English people actually started trying to talk like, well, you tried it a couple times. That was horrible. I'm like, oh my goodness. Now, ethno-nationalism also asserts that people who share a common ethnic heritage are entitled to their own nation state, or they should dominate the existing one. You know what I mean? Like they should be firmly on top of it and in control. Now, that is kind of what I think of when I think of Israel, because that's how they've set their government up. You know what I mean? It's firmly on that kind of government. And like before South Africa freaking finally broke free from the apartheid, that was the way they had established their government as well. You know what I mean?
Looking at it from a much more of a European perspective, and how do I say this? About the concept of cultural integration.
Well, that wouldn't fit within the context of
Yeah,
ethno-nationalism.
it's the opposite from what you're saying. Your concept from a European perspective, especially, remember that Britain is an island away from mainland Europe. I mean, that's what makes us somewhat unique in this situation. Whereas you had a lot of migration, a lot of wars, a lot of conquests in mainland Europe, between the fall of Rome and, let's say, modern day World War Two, World War One.
Near history is what I like to call it. Like instead of ancient history, you go to like near history or Western.
Okay.
I don't know. That is kind of weird because I have a hard time with classifying that too, because like for me, a lot of this stuff really isn't history. You know what I mean? I go farther back. I think like it. The Romans.
That's why I said that from the fall of Rome, from
Right.
10th century. Yeah.
Well, the Romans just barely fit into ancient history in my interpretation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's all I was saying. But that's just my personal preference. You know what I'm saying?
But my original point was that Britain has been able to defend itself because of that natural sea border.
Well, don't get me wrong. Okay, this ideology of ethno nationalism it shaped history. It was both empowering and catastrophic. You know what I mean? It fueled a lot of independent movements on one hand, but then it also showed a violent exclusion on the other hand. You know what I mean?
Oh.
So you had a split between it. You can find areas where historically freaking national or ethno-national ideologies, it did empower people. but it also caused a lot of bad things to happen in Europe. You know what I mean?
Just going back to my previous point, the concept of cultural integration. I can see the issue of ghettoization.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I personally feel though that like the whole ghettoization thing is a direct result of ethno nationalism, because like when you take a look at the Jews before World War II, that's where they were. Well, even before that, like back in the Age of Enlightenment, so forth, the Middle Ages, they were always herded up in the ghettos. They had to live in that ghetto atmosphere, and like here in the United States, I don't want to use the N word, but they were called N town. You know
yeah.
what I mean? That was where the blacks went. They lived there and they were segregated, and that's where they stayed. And they didn't try to move into a white neighborhood.
Yeah. There is such a form as self-imposed ghettoization.
Well, yeah, I mean, even back when I was younger, I remember a lot of black folks saying they wouldn't want to live in a white neighborhood. You know what I mean? They didn't
Mm.
they didn't like the way we lived. They didn't like the way we behaved. Things of that nature. So they just would rather be in a black neighborhood rather than be in a white neighborhood. Things have changed, and I mean, I hope that nobody realizes that we're talking racism. This was just the way it was back then, you know.
Arguably, in Britain at this present moment, you could see a form of self-imposed ghettoization
Mm-hmm.
with a certain faith.
Now, the with that being said about it shaping um, history, both empowering, you know, like independence movements and stuff, and also um, having catastrophic consequences. I also want to bring up particularly the late 19th and the early 20th century. Okay, when ethno nationalism actually gained prominence. That was through the rise of what's called pan-Slavic and pan-Russian ideologies. Now, have you learned much about those, Mark?
Not recently, but I'm aware of those terms.
Do you want me to read through it, or do you want to say something?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, now, pan-Slavism was the idea that all Slavic people should unite based on their cultural and linguistic bonds. Now, while originally imagined as a form of brotherhood, it also carried strong political undertones, especially as Slavic groups resisted the Germanic and Austrian Hungarian rule, which I find odd because the Germanic and Austrian Hungarian rule was what uh, Germany wanted just before World War II. They wanted the reunification of the Austro-Hungarian rule. You know,
Is this not also related to the Ottoman Empire?
well, the Ottoman Empire was still intact all the way up until World War One. That's when it was
Yeah,
finally disbanded after the war. You
but
know, but I, during World War II, I don't know exactly what the Ottoman. I don't know if they wanted to reunify the Ottoman Empire or not in the Middle East. You know what I mean? Like I know that after World War One, when that empire was uh, basically disbanded, the same thing was done with the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
I think after World War One, Turkey was no weak threaten, and yeah, even now Turkey's trying to become a European, or has been trying to become a European Union member for many years now. I think as we both know, World War One sort of destroyed the Ottoman Empire, and arguably, with maybe the exception of a Turkish viewpoint, and I'm talking about mainly southern Turkey here. Yeah, there was no appetite for such a concept.
It kind of makes sense to me on this too. On one thing, why Hitler had such a problem with the socialists in Russia too, because if if the pan-Slavic believers and the pan-Russian believers were groups that resisted Germanic and Austrian-Hungarian rule, then that means that it had to have been going on well before the Weimar Republic. You know what I mean? So they would have definitely been an obstacle in Hitler's plans. You know what I'm saying? They would have had to have been eliminated and taken out. So I remember,
Yeah.
I remember like some of the first attacks that Hitler was involved in was sending troops out to the east to attack what he considered the communists. You know what I mean?
This is after the failure of the what was the pact with Stalin?
Well, Hitler didn't like them at all. None of them.
Yeah, but they did sign that treaty, didn't they? They signed the what was it? The German.
No. Now, not only this do we have the pan-Slavism, okay, but
Molotov-Ribbentrop pact.
okay.
That's what I was thinking.
And what was that pact?
The Molotov-Ribbentrop pact of 1939.
You want to read it?
Really, it was to say it was a treaty between Russia and Germany for the Germans not to divide Eastern Europe, for both of them to divide Eastern Europe into spheres of influence, and effectively partitioning Poland, and not to interfere with each other.
Yeah. Now that right there is something that I do want to get into later on, but that would be more of a post World War One thing.
And obviously it failed when Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941. So Germany actually broke the pact treaty.
Well, there were excursions that took place even before that, back in the 30s, where during the Weimar Republic.
So I'm talking, between 1939 and 1941.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then when the actual invasion of, but like he was actually sending troops in to fight against the Slavic movements, and he was actually getting a lot of credit for it because he's getting a lot of popularity in Germany or the Weimar Republic because of that. You know, that was actually something. And then like what you were just talking about right there, that that right there is something that I do want to bring up in a later episode because it's very important. The other day when I was talking to you about the block, Europe has this fascination with setting up blocks, and they don't understand that these east and western blocks just they don't work. You know what I mean? Uh, it's been proven historically that it fails, and I'm gonna pop that information up on one of our episodes before we finish up with the Nazis, so that
Uh,
people.
I think we'd have to go all the way back to Napoleon's failure in Russia.
Well, just on blocks, just this whole
Okay.
concept
Yeah.
of blocks. You know what I'm saying? Now, there was also Pan-Russianism. Okay. Now that was a more empirical, or that was more empirical in nature. Okay. Um, of the oddest things, it declared that Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians, they were one people, and that their natural center was Moscow. Okay.
Mm.
Now, the Russian Empire used this ideology to justify expansion and suppression of like minority cultures through policies like forced Russification. That's what they called it, forced Russification. These beliefs they didn't remain contained to like rhetoric. They also shaped foreign policy. They encouraged intervention in neighboring states, and they also played a significant role in like destabilizing the region, leading up to World War One. And this was one of the reasons why World War One happened. Okay, now as these nationalist ideologies took hold, they also fostered exclusion. There was paranoia. There was violence towards those who didn't fit the ethnic mold. That led to pogroms. Um, those were violent mob attacks targeting minority communities, um, often with explicit or implicit government support. Um, and believe it or not, that's the tragic reality of it. You know, a lot of people, I think, have a hard time wanting to discuss what these pogroms like because it's a lot easier to talk about World War One and the Holocaust and how many Jews and Gypsies died. You know what I mean? But nobody wants to talk about this stuff taking place before World War One. It's just easy to put it in a box and say Adolf Hitler did all of it. You know what I mean? But
Mm.
that's not how history played out. Like I would go as far as saying Adolf Hitler was the product of his environment.
Yeah.
It was it was bound to happen. You know what I mean? Somebody was going to come along and become Adolf Hitler. If it was him or if it was somebody else, it didn't matter. And that's what Churchill was getting at. You know, when he did his famous speech on the
The
top.
famous "We will fight them on the beaches" one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so in the Russian Empire, uh, everybody always talks about the Jewish communities, and they always say that they were they always talk about them because yeah they were the most frequent targets. Okay, but then nobody realizes it wasn't just the Jews, like the Roma populations,
Mm.
who are referred to usually as gypsies. They were also attacked. That's something else that I always like to bring up. You know what I mean? Um, the Russian Empire and even the surrounding regions, like the Ukraine, Poland was big on it. So was Romania. Um, all of them, they they subjected Jews and Gypsies to waves of violence, especially from the 1800s into the early 20th century. You know, and this involves like homes being looted, synagogues were burned, families were beaten and killed, and the messed up part about it is the state rarely intervened, and there were times where officials did participate and even encourage the violence. You know, so this was a big deal that kept building up.
And if I'm not mistaken, countries like Croatia,
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, at the same time. Yeah.
Now the whole messed up part about it is like I said, mostly the Jews are always mentioned, but Roma communities faced similar situations. But the thing of it is what happened to them was often less documented. You know what I mean? And that was because they were viewed as like cultural outsiders. A lot of these people considered them racially inferior and incompatible with like their nationalist visions, and of course their nationalist visions consisted of pure ethnic of a pure ethnic state.
Do you remember that stream that we had? I think it was last year in relation to that mountain disaster in I can't remember which country or which province it was, but in some Asian part of Russia, in the Asian continent part of Russia.
Yeah, that just happened here recently, didn't it?
That was last year.
Was it?
Yeah, that's
I was thinking about the volcano or the earthquake. Sorry about that.
no. Oh
Yeah.
no. We had a conversation, and this was going back.
Yeah, about a year.
No, this was a long time ago. This was in relation to the those deaths on that mountain, which was considered sacred by the locals.
Now you're gonna get me all caught up in my strange and weird stuff. So
And we were talking about how the Soviets treated the
indigenous, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You were talking about the Diletnev Pass in
Yeah.
Russia. Yes, that was it. Yes, and yeah, the way the Russians treated their indigenous, that was after communism was firmly installed, and this goes back to the realist versus the ethno-national perspective too. You know what I mean? It's like I said, it kind of got to the point where all of this stuff got mangled into one another, and they used, like, realists eventually learned how to use romanticism as a tool. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And they started incorporating it into their forms of government, I guess you could say, so that they could learn how to control the masses more efficiently, according to their ethnic backgrounds and stuff like that, and trying to get them into believing in the great state of the Soviet Union, I guess you could call it. Start preaching that utopian world that all communists look for.
Even though it's quite ironic, but they still allowed the Orthodox Russian church to exist.
Well, see, I mean, people say that now, but I remember back when I was younger, man. I remember religious groups here in the United States were just adamant about saying that the Soviet Union was closing these churches down, and that you had to donate your Bible so that they can smuggle them across the border. You know what I mean?
It's in the same principle as China allows for religious orthodoxy, as long as those religions don't criticize the state
Mm-hmm.
and even uphold the state and values, then yeah.
Well, we were talking the other day, weren't we? And then I told you I think that that's actually a strategy that some country, I believe it was, had done. Oh wait, no, Cromwell. Cromwell. Okay, when he closed the playhouses down in London.
Hmm.
You know, to me, I think that's just the basic way of strategy. China did that for the longest time. Whenever freaking they brought communism to China, they shut everything down, all of the temples, all of it. And as time went by, when they felt that it was safe to reopen these religious institutions, they allowed it. But first, they had to re-educate the population, you know, to educate them and tell them that their ways of thinking under the former regime was wrong, and that they needed to think this way instead. You know what I mean?
And hence the issues of the cultural revolution, or Mao's cultural revolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean that right there is something that, yeah, that's actually productive, man. I'm glad you contributed. That was really good of you. You British man, you. Actually, we're supposed to be having a more refined and intellectual show here, so I can't be acting crazy like that. I gotta be responsible and intellectual and say cool stuff.
Leave that one to when Mr. Robot comes on. Possibly tomorrow.
Now, like I was saying though about like the gypsies, okay. The thing about these attacks is they often went unnamed and unacknowledged, but the patterns that of these attacks mirrored the pogroms that were taking place with the Jews, and that was both in structure and effect. Also, the displacement, the destruction, and death. You know what I mean? Like they did it exactly the same. Yet everybody talks about the pogroms, and they don't mention what had happened to groups like the Gypsies. And this goes way back before World War II. You know, everybody has to get out of that idea that this stuff was just happening in World War II. It goes all the way back even to the 1600s. You know what I mean?
Interestingly enough, the 19th century, you saw an influx of Eastern European Jews coming into the US, but you don't hear very much about Romanians entering.
Mm-hmm. That's because they were being killed off left and right. And I think,
Yes.
I think they really, really enjoyed England. To be honest with you, like you hear a lot about migrations from the Eastern Europe into England, and even to this day, you can find traces of Romani people if you look hard enough. Like they're you can see them in their wagons and stuff. A lot of people don't even know what you're don't even know what they're looking at. You know what I mean? They just drive by, or they see them riding by on their wagons, and they don't even. It doesn't even click into their head that these are like gypsies. You know what I mean?
After your question, much of the percentages are actually
You're breaking up.
heritage. But I remember back in the 80s that there was frequently news reports about should we call them gypsies? Gypsies entering private land and being requiring police to have them forced off private
Yeah.
land.
I've actually done a whole series on the gypsies and how horrible you English people were to them. Like you guys were just wretched and vile in the worst British way. And I I it, I think when it comes to like the way things played out with the gypsies in Europe and even in England, it shows you um, how tied down to bureaucracy and the way you guys portray freaking what's yours and what's not yours. You know what I mean? It's really extreme. Like these are
On the
people who do,
just to play devil's advocate for a minute, you do understand the concept of private land, private ownership.
right? And these people don't want your land. They just want to camp out there for a little while and tell some stories. You know what I'm saying? Hang out and freaking tell gypsy stories and maybe show a few people a few tricks. You know, things of that nature. They're not interested in moving into your property and settling roots there. And I mean, they're going to be there and then they're going to move off. Heck, they might even actually do work for you for free, just because you're letting them stay on their property. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Again, I was just
I
looking at
know.
it from a different point of view.
I know. now, now the whole thing comes into the whole idea that that national identity had to be protected from internal others. That's what um, caused these pogroms. Um, so that's something that I really do believe in. Like all of a sudden, it turned from outward, you know, about preventing all of these other people from coming into our country. It turned inward and it said, okay, you don't belong here. You need to go. You know what I mean? And that's when the pogroms started. Uh, so after that, with that, it basically, it, uh, it caused it to where people were being burned out of their homes and murdered. You know what I mean? That's about the best way of saying it.
Yeah.
And it eventually laid the you know ethno nationalism, in my opinion, and the hostility that came with it is what laid the groundwork for the genocides that happened in the 20th century, basically under the Nazi rule. Um,
Actually, I would actually. I'm thinking of the um, Japanese issue within China and other Asian countries throughout the 19th and early half of, or first half of the 20th century. In this concept.
well, I don't know about Japan, but like I know that in Germany it became state policy to do this stuff. It was actually a state policy. So I don't know for sure if Japan made it a state policy or not, but I know that it was in Germany.
I would argue, yeah, especially with the Sino-Japanese wars.
Now,
But yeah, I'm thinking of not only Japan, China, but I'm thinking of Japan and other countries around that area, Korea and stuff.
now, let me also make another distinction too. Like pogroms were referred to when it came to Jews, but the term that was used for the Roma people was parajmos, and that's a Romani word, and that literally means the devouring. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of how they felt about it. It was called the devouring. Um, and just like with the Jews, hundreds of thousands of them were deported. They're sterilized, murdered in camps, and they were also killed in mass executions. I've heard stories where freaking they would take gypsies out into the woods, have them dig a hole, and then just shoot them in the hole, and just take uh, tractors and fill the hole, and there would be huge mounds sitting in the middle of the woods, and nobody'd even know about it because a lot of gypsies did that. They would camp out in the woods, and they were always watchful against outsiders. So they had their system set up to where they would have guards around the camp that camped out in separate spaces, and they would watch. And then that was the reason why they did it, is because they had to keep an eye out, make sure that they weren't going to be done this way. And this was even before World War II, just to let you know. I mean, this is like that became their habit because of that, you know.
Well, when did the NDSA or NSDAP came to power? 1920, 1921?
Yeah.
So yeah, World War One or World War Two didn't officially start until 1939, late. So yeah, you had what already almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing of it is like after World War II, like the Jewish Holocaust, gradually it was recognized and remembered. You know what I mean? Even though it's often incomplete, or selective, basically. Like they like to use, and this goes back to what I was just saying. People are very selective about what they want to remember. They want to remember the Holocaust, World War II, but nobody wants to remember that this stuff was happening for hundreds of years before World War II ever happened. It was actually a buildup. And I personally, and I've said this before, I don't believe World War One was distinct and by itself, and it was caused by Adolf Hitler. I believe that it was actually a continuation of World War One.
Sorry, I was mistaken. The NSDAP was actually officially elected in 1933. They sort of started the influence in 1924.
Well, go ahead and read what you got there.
Well, I'm just looking at various data points.
Do you have any information to share other than that?
I would. This is actually a good book, partially fictional, but based on a lot of facts on Hitler's rise and when he went to prison in I can't remember what it's called. I had a copy of it at one point.
It was called It's called, oh my goodness, I should know this too. It's actually a famous freaking book.
He looked at his upbringing and his father's sort of civil service and these Austrian failed painter sort of, well, Austrian upbringing and then going to Germany to become an artist.
Now, just to finish it off with the gypsies, I do want to point out most of the information about the Roma and what happened was largely silenced. Most gypsy survivors they didn't get compensation or even acknowledgement or any justice. Like after the war, everybody was real big on compensation and recognition for what had been done with the Jews, but a large amount of these gypsies never got any kind of recognition whatsoever. There was the Holocaust, the Gypsy Holocaust in Turkey, which you were talking about earlier, where Turkey had literally walked gypsies to their death, man, because they were forced, what they call immigration, it was forced immigration where they were marched to their death, and I believe they were supposed to go north, and they were lined up and they were marched to their death like they did here in the United States with the Trail of Tears, And to this day, Turkey still won't recognize that they did that. They said that it's not true.
Gypsies, I think you're talking about the Armenian.
Well, when you say Armenian, you're basically talking about 80% of Romanians are gypsies, dude.
Yeah.
Roma. You have the Rom, the Dom, and then the Lam.
Yeah.
And
as once was known as Transylvania.
So when you're hearing Romania, you're really looking at like 80% of its population being gypsy, even though there's no genetic. There's really nothing genetically linking the gypsies as like an actual people. It's more linguistics and lifestyle and stuff.
Is that true when you consider going back even further, like the Impalers period?
Don't get me started on Vlad the Impaler, man. See, you're going to send me into...
When Romania was still technically was known as Transylvania.
Well, I mean, I'm like supposed to be all sophisticated and smart and everything. You want me to start talking about vampires and stuff? Is that...
No, I wasn't. I even thought about that, actually, funny enough. No, but I was talking about really during the sort of heyday of Russian Tsardism.
Well, I actually the history of that area is very, very interesting. I actually did a little bit on that with Georgi Rakoczy and his mishap when it came to I think it was Romania, and like a lot of the stuff that happened during that time period is myth. You know what I mean? Because they had a really hard time with the environment and the climate. There was a lot of violence and warfare and things of that nature, as well as the fact that not too many people were really educated enough to write. You know what I mean? So a lot of the information coming out of Romania is after like 500 AD. You know what I mean?
Talking about later medieval, so the 15th century.
Well, 15th century. Now that would have been what, right around the time they converted to Christianity, right?
I'm not absolutely sure on that. You could be right. Um,
Well, actually, they were one of the oldest countries in Europe to convert to
yeah,
Christianity.
it doesn't actually it doesn't sound right. I would have to do the research on this, but because the majority of Europe was Christian by that period. Or
Mhm. Well, Santa Claus actually comes out of that too. So that's a good story for a different time. We can get into that when I get into some of the cool stuff about more older traditions. Right now, this is like political history,
Mm.
but I do get into history and stuff. And I actually wanted to go over that back whenever Jaffe was doing his Operation Secret Santa Claus. And I forgot to really pull that up and get that going. But I'd like to do that. We may have done a little bit on it, to be honest. Me and you've done quite a bit.
I think we've sort of at least spoken about it as a sort of tangent sort of thing.
Yeah. Now, the uh, other than talking about the Roma, now when it comes to like modern ethno nationalism, okay. Um, Now, a lot of people link this up with far right movements. Now, for me, when I hear the word left and I hear the word right, first thing I always say is it doesn't matter because that's all socialist. Okay, the
Yeah.
term left and right by itself is a socialist terminology.
As
Um,
I've mentioned many times, extreme far left and far right is just two sides of the same coin. It's both extreme socialism. One's national and one's more internationalism.
mhm. Now, a lot of people also like to connect far right with modern ethno nationalists too, and I don't really fall in line with that. You know what I mean?
No, I don't. It's a sort of modern day, I don't know, trope.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I think they want us to believe that on purpose. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Mm.
to be honest with you. um, Now, ethno nationalism, though often presented as a call for cultural pride and self determination, had a long history of fueling violence against those who do not conform to a dominant ethnic identity. Um, Now, that's whether it's through imperial expansion, uh, forced assimilation, pogroms, or even genocide. Now, the ideology has repeatedly been used to justify the persecution of minorities.
Oh.
The legacy of the pan Slavic and pan Russian ideologies and the violent acts they inspired uh, should serve as a sobering reminder that when national belonging is tied to blood, the consequences can be both intimate and catastrophic. Anything you want to say about the pogroms and the
Yeah, I think you really sort of covered my own thoughts
Mhm.
on this. Yeah.
Now, they see the nation not as a civic space open to anyone who joins the culture, okay, but as a kind of extended family bond by historical lineage. Now, This belief can shape movements for independence, like the push for the Kurdish state or a Jewish homeland in Israel. Okay, it can also fuel exclusionary or even dangerous ideologies, especially when it's used to argue that outsiders threaten the purity of unity and nation. Now that's where ethno-nationalism becomes controversial because it can slip into racism, xenophobia, or policies that marginalize minorities. Ethno-nationalism isn't just a theory, it's shaping borders, stirring emotions, and let's just be honest about it, it starts fights all around the world. You know what I mean? If you look at the controversies that are even going on today, you'll find that it is tied to ethno-nationalism. And I'll bring up ravenism as
Yeah, I'm also looking at this from a sort of globalization sort of the removal of or the this loosening of traditions and cultures and ideals.
well, see, I mean, I feel that it's the fire that says, this land is ours because we are us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but land countries have been created out of what's the word I'm looking for? Invasions and can't think what the word I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, okay, let's be honest here. Like, no, it is it is it
That's what I'm thinking.
is it actually primal? Maybe territorial, and also it's pretty damn persuasive to people who feel threatened, marginalized, or longing for some kind of unity. Don't you think?
Yeah, but if you are trying to unify a country by dissolving a existing culture and an existing nationhood.
Okay. So let's take a look at the creation of Israel. Okay. And I know. Now it was driven by, no, enlarged by Jewish ethno-nationalism. It had the idea that the Jewish people, with their shared religion, history, language, and suffering, deserve their own homeland.
We're talking about modern creation. They both had treaty.
Right, but they,
rather than the 2,000-year-old sort of argument.
well, I mean, no, just let's look at it today with the Jewish state.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, they believe that they deserve their own homeland. Okay. Now, on the flip side, you had the Palestinian nationalism, and it basically raised a direct response. Okay, and that was rooted in identity, land, and displacement of Arab Palestinians. So you got both of these peoples who are basically practicing ethno-nationalism. Okay. And it eventually becomes a brutal emotional standoff between two peoples. And what they're doing is they're trying to claim the same space for their own identity. And it's still going on decades later. You know what I mean? I mean,
there is the theologic element into this as well. It's not to say.
But theologic is still ethno-nationalism and romanticism. You see what I mean? You still can't escape that because, like, realists don't look at your ideologies. They don't care about that. You know what I mean? The United States, the only reason why the United States even has relations with Israel is because of realist um, realist beliefs when it comes to government. They don't care about what's right and wrong. They don't care about what's morally um, morally compromising or any of that stuff. Okay, they're worried about what works. It's a technocratic, realist point of view where it could cause more harm not to have a relationship with Israel rather than having a relationship with them. You know what I mean? So even though the people here in the United States may have problems with Israel, our government isn't going to end that relationship off of ideological beliefs. You know what I mean?
But on the other end, looking at it from a fundamentalist Shia, Hamas sort of stance, the river to the sea argument, the destruction of Israel argument.
Well, that goes back to freaking romanticism, man.
Indeed, indeed.
You see what I mean? You can't
Yeah,
escape it.
yeah. So it's a um,
It's just it's there in your face. No matter how much you try, you cannot escape that. So, without getting too deep into Israel, let's talk about Yugoslavia after the Yugoslavia collapsed. Now, ethno-nationalism exploded after that. Now, you had the Serbs, you had the Croats, you had the Bosniaks, and each group wanted to define its own space by ethnicity. And we all know what followed. You know what I mean? It was horrifying. There was ethnic cleansing, forced migrations, then there was genocides, and it's like what I was talking about. What happened to the gypsies? They found that in Yugoslavia too. They found entire freaking mounds of dead bodies where they were freaking killing them, and just piling them up and burying them in holes. Now, the thing of it was raw, unchecked ethno-nationalism, and what it did is it drove violence on a massive scale, all in the name of purity and reclaiming ancestral lands and stuff of that nature. You know what I mean? So that right there is a really, really big warning. For me and you, we're old enough to remember that. We might have been teenagers, maybe early adults. You know what I mean? But I'm sure
the collapse of the Soviet Union and the sort of power struggles afterwards.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I still remember Yugoslavia and the Kurdish and the and Serbians and all of that. You know what I mean? What is it? Serbia, Herzegovina is what it was actually referred to.
Yeah.
In politics. So now, if anybody wants to find out about that, do some research. Check it out. This is modern day genocide that people don't really hear much about, because, like, if you've heard about World War II and the genocide that took place there, and you haven't heard about what happened in Yugoslavia, then you need to check that out. You need to find out the genocide didn't end after World War II. We didn't come together, hold hands, and sing Kumbaya, things.
Yeah, but once you've had it's made me feel old now, thinking there's, 30 odd years ago? Yeah. roughly.
It's long. It's about that.
Yeah, but it's mainly related to well, it's not just an ethnic issue itself. It was a power struggle issue. It was a fall of a prominent political the fall of the Soviet Union, which created power vacuums.
Well, for me, I think that it's more than just geopolitics. It's about identity. It's about history.
Mm.
And it's also about power that's cloaked in ethnic loyalty, basically. Now, when you look at it like that, then here's a good question with you. What's your feelings on Vladimir Putin? How he's used kind of a Russian ethno-nationalist point of view to justify invading Ukraine. You know, now,
considering the percentage of individuals that Ukrainians that identify themselves as Russian, you could say it is is it a vacuum, power vacuum? With lack of identity.
well, I mean, do you think Vladimir Putin is justified by his claims? Because I mean,
in the modern context, no.
Okay.
It's a sort of romanticism, as you say, to go back to a sort of a sort of vision of what the Soviet Union
or
was
Russia.
Yeah.
Well, see, I did the history on that too, and I know that the Rus, which was the actual group before they became Russian and before they migrated and Moscow became their capital, they were called the Rus. And I know that the Rus originated out of Kiev or Kiev. That was the original city where the Rus became known as the Rus, not the Russians, but the Rus. And like when you say Ukraine and you say Russian, you're saying Rus. They are all one and the same. I agree on that. Okay, but when it comes to and yeah, there are a majority of people in Ukraine that do still consider themselves Russian, you know. But when it comes to romanticism and realism, that's a tough question because, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's where they did get their identity as Russians. So it does create an interesting question. I mean, you know, it's not cut and dry. It's not easy like everybody's making it out to be, because I think that's really kind of the thin line. You know what I mean?
And it's worth remembering that the Soviet Union, like we were saying, only fell in 89, 90. It's still within, let's say, what we know, 3 generations later, 2 generations later.
Okay. Now,
Sorry, my point was that there are still people alive now that can remember the Soviet Union and
they're all old people though now. You got to remember that, because
we can remember the Soviet Union.
You just said you're starting to
remember Gorbachev.
Yeah, but you just said that you feel old now because freaking we were talking. Okay, just face it, dude. You know what I mean? It's like only old people know that, is what I'm saying, because like these young ones, they just don't really. I mean, they weren't there. You know what I mean? I remember the fall when the wall fell. You know what I mean? I remember it. I watched it on TV when it was happening.
And our parents, or your parents and my father's in what, their 70s?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and they can still remember. So we're talking about what?
Did your parents still have a bunker?
No, no.
I had to ask because
I've never seen an actual built Anderson shelter. I know that it's still common to have Anderson shelters in the 50s,
well, you know,
even 60s.
70-year-old men and women aren't going to tell you they've got a freaking shelter in the backyard. You know that goes against the policy, right? Like,
Yeah, but that's only what, roughly 20 odd years older than us.
well, I'm saying like these people that own these houses with these shelters in the backyard, they're not going to tell you because when the bomb drops, they don't want you come knocking, wanting in, so that they have to share their resources with you. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of like the mentality they had, that you had to protect your family, put them down there, have enough food and water for them. And if somebody comes knocking at your shelter and they're begging for help, they can't get it because guess what? They didn't do what these people did. They didn't build protection against the
I
bomb.
remember a lot of Anderson shelters were made out of corrugated iron and stuff, so they would have all degraded now. And if we want to go further back, then much of the older ones are old coal sheds or basements.
Yeah, just unequipped. They really didn't know, and they still don't know what the effects of radiation is going to be. To be honest with you, like it's just theory. You know, like we could have mutated people.
Oh, we do have an idea of what, because of Japan.
Oh yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get on to India. Okay. Now,
The Indian-Pakistan partition.
now India, believe it or not, has seen a rise in Hindu ethno-nationalism. Have you known anything about that? Especially when it comes to being part of the British Empire.
Not within recent periods. I fairly educated about the Indian-Pakistan sort of partition of the 50s, 55, if I'm on the right side.
Yep.
And just trying to think of that American film from but there was a issue with Hindu nationalism, but also Islamic nationalism as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, the whole thing with the Hindu ethno-nationalism, there were some political movements that argued that India should be fundamentally a Hindu nation. Now, that's even though it has like large Muslim, Christian. I believe they have Sikh there, or what do they call them? The Sikh, or the ones that carry blades in their freaking
Sikhs.
Yes, Sikhs. And other religious minorities. You know what I'm saying? The idea that the idea of a Hindu nation isn't really like new. Now, like during the time that you Brits,
I'm just thinking. I don't know if it's still true now, but the famous British Gurkha regiment was at least up to a certain point, was mainly a Sikh regiment, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, the thing about it is like with this, it it really is interesting. I checked this out because I really couldn't imagine a bunch of Indians having this kind of like Hindu ethno-nationalism. I pictured it being more of a Buddhist thing because like whenever you hear about India, the first thing comes to your mind is Buddhism. At least for me. So when I heard that they had a Hindu nationalist ethno-nationalism movement, that kind of caught my mind. Now, like I said, this idea of a Hindu nation, it isn't entirely new either. Now, it actually happened during the British colonial rule in
Sorry,
India.
I was wrong. The partition was in 1947.
The partitioning.
Pakistan, India.
Yeah. Well, that really actually caused more problems, to be honest with you. Like in my opinion, at least. Like whenever they did their split, because now it's not just Pakistan versus India. Apparently, Kashmir is involved in all of it too. So you've got this whole like split between them, and then of course China is involved when it comes to freaking Kashmir. So that's kind of interesting there. That's turned into a whole freaking mess.
Yeah.
Okay, so now during the British colonial rule, India's diverse religious and cultural makeup began to crystallize into more distinct categories, especially as census data, religious reform movements, and colonial policies emphasized differences over unity. Now, while the Indian independent movement included secular and pluralist voices like Mahatma Gandhi, um, Hindu nationalist ideologies um, like Vanayak Damodar Savarkar and later M.S. Goldwalker envisioned a very different India, one rooted explicitly in the Hindu identity. You ever heard those names? Savarkar?
I'm just trying to think. Possibly.
Now, Savarkar, it was writing in the 1920s, and it coined the term Hindutva, like Hindu, TVA at the end, which means Hinduness. And he argued that India should be the homeland of Hindus, where non-Hindus could live only if they accepted Hindu culture and political dominance. This was not simply a religious vision, but an ethno-national ideology. It linked Indian identity with Hindu ethnicity, culture, and history, excluding Muslims and Christians as foreign elements. Now, this shift has impacted everything from laws to citizenship to religious freedom. Again, tying national belonging to a specific ethnic religious identity. Now, what do you think about that?
What can I say?
I never could imagine anybody from India thinking like that, just to be honest with you. It just kind of blew me out of the water. I thought they were like all loving and cared about everybody.
You just make me think, and I had to just look it up. A 1959 US film, Northwest Frontier.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
It really is. I'm glad Mr. Robot's not here, because if he heard that stuff, he would have come unglued. How dare you call India ethno-nationalists? He just couldn't. I don't think he could have coped with that realization. I'm glad he didn't come in. He probably would have cried right here on live stream. I'd almost bet. Okay, so this is where we need to get down to the tax, the brass taxes of it all. This is something that you and a lot of people have had an issue with. Now, in countries like France, Hungary, and Italy, ethno-nationalist rhetoric is often used to resist immigration, particularly from Muslim majority countries. Now, the argument is that the true nationalist identity is under threat, and that culture, language, and heritage need to be protected. Now, this can manifest into like broader control, cultural assimilation demands, or outright racism. What do you think about that?
History demonstrates this. I mean, what can I say?
Now, the thing is, it's like it can take two different courses. You know what I'm saying? Because ethno-nationalism, no matter how you look at it, is pretty powerful. Okay. First of all, it taps into belonging. Okay. It also creates pride, but it also creates fear as well. You know what I mean? Now, when you look at people who feel like their identity is being diluted or erased, you know what I mean? They seem to cling harder to the tribe, basically. You know what I mean? It all
Well, what can you do? You either going to do. You've got two options, really, haven't you? You either let said actions take place, or you try to defend yourself, or defend your identity.
See, for me personally, especially with England should really respect their own conservative values. Okay, now you guys' values are the first version of conservatism. Okay, so if you look at this as a conservative point of view, what you do is you go and you freaking get yourself some guns, you put them in your house, and you wait, okay? And you let this stuff grow up organically. Now, either these people who are coming to your country are going to help benefit your communities. You know, they're gonna be a benefit to your community, or they're gonna be a problem. If they become a problem and it becomes a point where there's going to be violence involved, then you will have the guns available for you to where you can protect your property and stuff of that nature. You know what I mean? But I don't believe as a conservative you should be out there pushing a lot of this technocratic, realist kind of
As a culture, only even though there is this Americans have this illusion that these guns are not owned by any Briton. Remember,
I've heard that through rumors. I've heard
remember that Britain is a big agricultural country, and obviously we've got farms and farmers that require to remove pests from vermin from there, or
Well, we're not talking about BB guns, though, Mark.
but shotguns, that sort of thing.
You don't take a shotgun after a rat, dude. Sorry, just have you ever seen the mess that causes, dude? Like now,
Yeah, but I'm talking about larger animals such as foxes and.
yeah, you do have to do. I need to control myself. I was going to get a little rowdy there, and I'm trying to be intellectual, and smart.
Stuff. Yeah.
So I need to stop that. But yeah, you're right. You're right. Now, I've heard those rumors and everything, and I was told that the king said that commoners couldn't have guns and weapons, and that even the police weren't allowed to have weapons at one time.
Yeah, as a cultural arming yourself is a bit of a
Symbolic, basically.
not symbolic. It's a sort of as a what's the word I'm looking for? Cultural sort of.
For me, what I think it is.
It's tasteful.
Well, I mean, for you guys, I think it's more of of how you want to be perceived. You know what I'm saying? It's like we have our police, and people respect the police, and we don't need guns to dictate freaking the way a police officer should be treated or how they should behave. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but in the UK, this goes back to the Peel reforms. Police are they police by consent, which goes back to the original, like I said, the Peel reforms.
Peelites. The big dogs, the ones that actually were the movers and shakers in classical liberalism.
I'm talking about when was the Peel reforms? The 18th, 19th century.
Mm-hmm. The Peelites actually have a lot of things in common with classical liberalism here in the United States, especially. Peel himself respected what the colonies here in the United States was doing, but he didn't agree with the revolution. You know what I mean? He didn't agree with the actual conflict.
I'm thinking of the 1823 goals at.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, he had his comments on the American Revolution, right? We went through that last year.
Yeah.
So we've got that covered. We are coming up to 2 hours and 49 minutes, and we have gone through all of the talking points. And we did it without any kind of outbursts. We did it sophisticated, and we didn't cause any problems.
Right. American Peel, American Revolution. That does make sense. He died in 1850.
Peelites were what I remember. We actually did a whole thing on last year with Peel, I believe. Either it was Peel or wait a minute, it could have been what was his name? Yeah, we
So you're talking about 17.
wait, the Peelites maybe. You're freezing up.
He's too young. He was born in 1788.
1788.
Yeah.
Actually, the French or American Revolution was in 1776, wasn't it?
1765 to 1783, technically.
Hmm.
So yeah, who's what? 5 years too young to even.
So Maybe we were talking about Edmund Burke. No, because I'm pretty sure Edmund Burke was a conservative, wasn't he? He's the one that accidentally gave the anarchists their pretty much their Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
He did when he was younger. He wrote a thing that the anarchists eventually took to heart and thought was really great. He wasn't all that proud of it. So okay, so I believe where the Peelites came into play was when we were talking about the Whigs, and they merged with the Peelites and the Radicals and created your guys' first Labor Party or the Liberal Party, the actual like Liberal Party, not like Labor.
Yeah.
So that was where it's at. I would like to dive into that later on, but we're gonna have to do something with that because we're not gonna like do it as a format like this. Like right now we're discussing Europe, and then last year we discussed England, and then the year before that it was the United States. But I'd like to do something where we can have an open conversation about all of it. You know what I mean?
Hmm. You have to
So,
share, we'll have to review notes and stuff
mm-hmm. see
beforehand.
where we can go with it and everything.
Mm.
So it's now at 2 hours and 53 minutes. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, really, I'm on minds.com under the username Midworthy.
Okay, and you can find me at Element Matrix at Live with Roger Hansen. You can also find me on Teams at Live with Roger Hansen, and Roger's Real-Time Talk Show is still on there too. Now, other than that, I do have a Discord, but that's for my gaming and for my strange and bizarre and weird stuff that I like to post up there. But you can find me at Gaming with Infamous if you want to go on there. And you can also find me at the Wonderful World of Weirdness on Discord. Now, on X, I go by Roger Hansen at ROG LOL1973, I believe. You can find me there. I usually don't go there very much, but I am on there. Besides that, I am on minds.com as Roger_Hansen. You can find me at Roger_Hansen on Kick as well as on DLive. And on Rumble, I am live with Roger Hansen. That's my channel. I'm also I'm on Rumble. I'm on the Praetorian, as well as on YouTube. I'm on the Praetorian too. So that's all of it. That's all the stuff.
As I keep on trying to push you into, you have to try and simplify all this.
Well, I've figured it out. You know what's the best thing to do? The best thing to do is just keep it categorized, because I get better statistics from the topics that we're talking about on what kind of stuff people actually enjoy and what they don't. You know what I mean? Which, don't get me wrong. I mean, it would be cool if you could do all that stuff in one stream, but I also don't get the proper analytics like I would by doing this, you know.
No, I mean just all the addresses you've got, all the.
I've already ditched most of them, dude. Like,
simplify them up even further.
Like, I don't even care about X no more, to be honest with you, and I barely go on Minds. The only reason why I go on Minds is because I want to freaking see if there's anything happening in the notifications or stuff, you know. But other than that, I don't even go on there anymore. I'm more on the VoIPs. I'm on Teams. I'm on Discord and Elements with you guys more than anything else. I don't really get caught up in these platforms anymore. I don't go to Facebook or X or
This is why I try to stick with Minds, because just as a singular platform, um, um, just makes it a lot more easier to find.
yeah. And people don't bother you as much. You know what I'm saying? It's like when I was on Facebook, it was like everybody was always getting on there talking about how much they miss their mama. Oh, I miss my mama. She's been gone for 20 years. And I remember when her mama was alive. You know what I mean? She treated her like crap. But now, 20 years later, she misses her. You know what I mean? Stuff like that used to piss me off. And now I just let it roll off my shoulder. You know why? Because I don't have to watch that or read that stuff on Facebook every time I get up and go to my computer. It's a great life, guys. Just give it up and walk away from it and don't be a part of it, you know?
Yeah, they would say in touch grass. Again, I'm not a overly big love of social media per se. There's only a couple platforms that we'll use as a general sort of regular sort of thing, and again, I will only generally post on my own content. Would only be, or any content that I publish would only generally be on Minds.
Yep. So, with all that being said, I'd like to tell everybody thank you for watching. We stream on Rumble, we stream on Kick, Twitch, YouTube, and DLive. If you like what you've seen here, please like, subscribe, share, make comments, give us feedback down in the comment section. Whatever, man. If you want to do it in the chat, you can do it in the chat too, but we like to talk to people in the comment section too, you know what I mean? All I ask is that you respect one another and don't get into arguments. Treat each other with respect when you're having conversations, you know what I mean? Because that's the only way you're going to actually be able to learn something in life if you learn how to get along. So, with that being said, I'd like to say thank you for being here, Mark, and thank everybody else for being here as well. Hope you have a good day, and I'm going to end the stream.